what is next? Now we're going to see the umbrella policies. So I'm switching over to umbrella now. And I'm going to show you the policies you can do for any traffic that goes to those two new data centers. And we just defined what traffic goes to the data centers within the Meraki. So default traffic by the way, goes to those two data centers right down. There's two of them in case one of them goes down for maintenance or whatever. Okay, so we are going to start by going into our policies. Okay, and I'll start with DNS policy, and I'm going to be quick about this because this is the umbrella that those of you that know umbrella have known for a long time, very familiar with the DNS policies. And we'll set this up, but I just want to specify a couple of things here. I have two policies, one for SSL decryption and one for default policy. I'll explain why. The SSL decryption policy I'm affecting one identity. What that means, who does this apply to? And my identity in here is my roaming computer, the one I just added, right? That's me. Okay, so I'm out on the road, I get this policy. Okay, and nobody else. So just the roaming policy is what this applies to. And we'll go through and look at the security settings. So I'm going to go into the security settings. These are your dynamic threats. The thing that Umbrella is that's its most powerful feature is dynamically categorizing destinations based on their threat level, right? Their posture, their disposition. Okay, so we want to block all the bad stuff. And we're going to save that in a reusable setting just called custom DNS settings. Okay, so now let's look at some of the other things. We'll look at these categories. And URL filtering categories are all part of the same across the board. But the one I want to point you to here is gambling, because we're gonna test later, and I want to be able to discern which policy stops this. So I put gambling here under the DNS policy. So later when we try to go to a gambling site, it's blocked, and we know it's blocked by the DNS policy. Okay, so there's that piece. Also within the DNS policy, Umbrella has the ability and global visibility to recognize, I mean, I don't even know the number, thousands, millions, I don't know, of cloud applications, continuously learning. Well, I want to block all anonymizers, to keep from anybody in my household who's trying to go around my security features and get to sites they're not supposed to, right, if there were such people, from doing that. So this will prevent them from doing that, mitigate the chances of them going to that. I mean, there's all kinds of them within there, and that list grows, right? So I'm just picking the whole category. Okay, and again, I'm going to save that as a reusable sort of object called DNS, a custom DNS application settings. Okay, what else here? I'm actually going to jump down here to talk about intelligent proxy briefly. So this is sort of a reputation of a site. You have sites with good reputation, bad reputation, and on other sites, consider like Reddit, where you have some subdomains that are fine and some that are malicious. You don't want to block all of Reddit. So your intelligent proxy knows those sites and can redirect that traffic to a cloud proxy for deep packet inspection. Okay, and when you turn this intelligent proxy on, now you have the ability of turning on up here file analysis. Since you're now looking at the data stream, you can turn on file analysis, which is awesome because it is actually Cisco's advanced malware protection AMP technology to look for malware within the stream and stop that. Again, that's only pertaining to intelligent proxy eligible traffic. Okay. And the other thing we can do here is we can do SSL decryption. Note here, though, that the endpoint has to have trust a certificate. So you download the certificate and trust it. And I have that. I've done that on my workstation so that I trust the certificate, because you have to permit Umbrella to be a sort of a man in the middle for your browser traffic, SSL traffic, to be able to decrypt it, inspect it, and re-encrypt it. If you don't trust that certificate, you'll get a certificate warning. Okay, so now we want to look at this block page, because again, we want to, when we do our test, be able to discern which one is blocked by which policy. So my DNS policy here, my block page for DNS policy is going to look like this. It's going to come up, and it only does that when I'm doing a test here. And it's going to say it's blocked, and we got Gandalf here saying, no, you can't go to this site. And we know when we see Gandalf here that we're in the DNS policy. Okay, so that's good to go. That one's ready to go. And what's the difference between our SSL decryption policy and our default policy? The only thing is SSL decryption, because some things I can't push that certificate to, IoT devices. TVs, whatever, right? So I want them to do everything that the other one does except for SSL decryption. Okay, so that means that I've got my roaming client will hit this one, and everything else in my house will hit this one. Okay, so is there anything else I want to cover with that? I think we're ready to move on to the firewall policy. Moving right along here. Yeah, we're good on time. The firewall policy, one of the new features of Umbrella SIG, Secure Internet Gateway, is a cloud firewall. So this means that any of the traffic from a destination can go to the cloud to have sort of stateful firewall features. So, you know, with an MX, you might say, well, that might be a little bit redundant. But if you did not have an MX and you only had, let's say, a Viptela at the internet edge there, then this could be the cloud firewall for that Viptela. But we'll go through this for demonstration's sake. And in this firewall, the first thing I want to point out, because it's easy to overlook here, is under settings, I can come in here and say, intrusion prevention settings, turn it on. Do I want to protect or monitor? I want to protect. And you have your various levels of sort of aggressiveness on how you want to, whether you want to permit or block. I always like using the balanced security. Give you the most effectiveness and the least amount of false positives. Okay, so back to our firewall policy. What are we doing here? This is just IP address. So the one I want to point out here is this particular rule. We'll have a look at it. And I'm saying block ping to 1.1.1.1. What am I doing? It's the first action. Okay. And what am I doing? Blocking and permitting. Well, I'm going to block ICMP any, and the destination is 1.1.1.1. So if I ping 1.1.1.1, it should not work. Right? It should block it. And then we can do this only certain times a day if it hits the use case and you want to see a logging for that, so we can look in a log to see what goes on with that. Very simple. And so that's my only firewall rule. I'm going to cancel here. Okay, so that's the firewall rule. I have some other things in here as well. Oh, there's one other block. Nope, that's it. So our firewall policy, that's it for this one. Now we're going to move on to the web policy. So this one is more pertaining to URLs more so than IP addresses. And it's a full proxy, full decryption when that's turned on. And I will demonstrate here. My first rule set is SSL decryption. And first I need to figure out who is this applied to. So in my demonstration, I'm applying it only to, again, just my roaming computer, just for testing purposes. Okay? And I know my roaming computer has the certificate that allows Umbrella to be a proxy. And down here, I am saying that I have enabled HTTPS inspection. That's not just intelligent proxy like the DNS policy. That's everything. I can proxy everything, have full visibility, because most of the traffic nowadays is HTTPS, not HTTP. DNS protection is great for DNS level protection, but if you need to catch it in midstream, you need your SSL inspection. Okay, so I've got it turned on for this policy. And I have 3 rules here set up. First one is just a warn rule. Let's see what that looks like. That means is when you try to go to this web page, it's going to pop up and say, hey, warning, you might not want to go to this site, but it'll let you go if you really want to. Okay, if that's a particular use case. What's our use case in here? We're going to go into our content categories, and I only have one category in here for the sake of keeping it clean. As soon as I can find it, it's news. So if you try to go to a news site, it's going to warn you. Now, it's not really a valid use case, but it's just, again, for a demonstration of being able to pick out and know what's being blocked by what. So you go to a news site, you're going to get a warning, but it's not going to stop you. You can still go to it. Okay? And this says it uses the default identity if I come in here, which, again, we set down below here is just roaming computers. Okay? So the second rule here is isolate. That's a fun one. Isolate is this. For these destinations here, when they come in here and go to these destinations, they'll get an isolated browser, kind of like incognito, right? So it says just within there, and when they, so you go into a library or some public place or whatever, and you come in here, you get your own little private browser, and when you leave, there's none of your information left on the browser because it was a virtual browser. Okay, it was isolated. Okay, it's not just opening up the incognito on the browser you're at. It's actually doing a remote isolated browser. Okay, so we're doing a few categories here, but the one that I'm interested in is, hey, we're almost there. Which one is it here? Shopping. So for this particular demonstration, if we go to a shopping site, and those other ones I have in here, you get an isolated browser, which I'll show you, and it's really very cool. Okay, they can go, it's just isolated to protect them. So let's say anything, bank sites. If you want to go to banking or whatever, that's a great use case for an isolated site, right? You don't want that many of your stuff left over. And then I got a block bad stuff rule, which is your typical, block rule. But I have some other contents in here for testing, and that is job search. So if you go to his job search there, you should be blocked. And I'll just test. I set that up in this case so I can test going to that site. And if it didn't work, I wasn't going to be really embarrassed, right? So job search is going to be very benign if it happens to get through. So I'll pick one of those sites, right? So right, so there is your web policy. So pick firewall and then one more. And that is the data loss prevention policy.